The day my manager handed me a termination agreement and told me my name was already burned, she was smiling. That smile is what I think about now, whenever I feel like the world rewards the wrong people. Because that smile is also what she was wearing 6 weeks later when the compliance panel asked her to explain, under oath, why her own meeting recordings contradicted every word of the complaint she had filed against me. Let me start at the beginning. I had been a team lead at Vantage Solutions for 4 years when the restructuring announcement landed. It was a Tuesday in late October, one of those grey mornings where the office heating has not quite caught up with the temperature outside and everyone is still wearing their coats at their desks. I remember that detail because I had just made myself a coffee in the kitchen, poured it into the blue ceramic mug I kept at the office, the one my daughter had painted for me when she was 7 with the word Dad in uneven red letters, and I was walking back to my desk when Sandra Moll, my direct manager and the head of our department, stopped me in the corridor. She was wearing her good blazer, the charcoal one she saved for presentations to the board. At 9:15 on a Tuesday morning, that blazer was already a signal, though I did not read it correctly yet. "Big day today," she said, and touched my arm briefly, the way you touch someone you are about to use. "I need you sharp." "I'm always sharp," I said. She laughed, just a little too loud. I went back to my desk and opened my emails and found the restructuring memo that had been sent to all senior staff at 8 that morning. The company was consolidating 3 departments into 2. Headcount would be reduced. A new senior director position was being created above the existing team lead level, and internal candidates were being considered. Applications had to be submitted within 10 days. My team of 7 people gathered around the printer in the corner of the open plan office, reading the memo off the same sheet of paper, talking quietly. I watched them. I had worked with most of them for 2 or 3 years. Priya had just come back from maternity leave 4 months ago. Tobias was finishing a certification that would make him the most qualified data analyst in the department. Leonie had turned down an offer from a competitor 6 months earlier because I had personally vouched that this place had a future. I set my coffee mug down on my desk. I did not apply for the senior director position. I made that decision in about 90 seconds, standing at my desk, reading the memo for the second time. The senior director role would require relocating to the Hamburg office for at least 18 months. It would pull me entirely out of team management and into cross-departmental politics. And most importantly, if I took it, my team would be left without an advocate during the restructuring, which meant at least 2 of them would almost certainly be cut. The math was not complicated. I stayed. What I did not know then was that Sandra had already decided she wanted that position for herself, and that she had already decided I was the only person in the department who could credibly challenge her for it, and that she had already begun building the case to remove me before I even knew there was a case to build. The first sign came about 2 weeks after the memo. A colleague from a different team, a woman named Claudia, who sat 3 rows away from me and who I had always been friendly with, stopped me near the lifts and said, very quietly, "Someone is asking questions about you, just so you know." I asked her what kind of questions. About how you manage your team, whether people feel safe coming to you with problems, whether you ever create a difficult environment. She looked uncomfortable saying it. "I thought you should know." I thanked her. I went back to my desk. I sat down and I thought about that for a long time. The phrase difficult environment is HR language. It does not appear in casual conversation between colleagues unless someone has been coached to use it. Someone was building a vocabulary around me, seeding it into informal conversations, preparing the ground for something more formal. I did not confront Sandra. I did not ask HR what was happening. I did not tell my team to be careful about what they said. I did the opposite of all of those things. I started keeping records. I had been using our internal meeting software to record team calls since the beginning of the year, which was standard practice in our department and was disclosed to all participants at the start of every call. I had never paid particular attention to those recordings before. Now I went back through 6 months of them and downloaded every single file. I also printed the attendance logs, the project sign-off sheets, and the performance notes I had written for each team member. I saved everything to an encrypted folder on my personal laptop, which I brought home that evening. I also began keeping a time-stamped log. Every interaction with Sandra, every email, every corridor conversation noted down within an hour of it happening, with the time, the location, and the exact words I could remember. I did this quietly, consistently, and without telling anyone except my wife, who looked at the growing folder on my laptop one evening and said, "You already know this is going to get bad, don't you?" "I think so," I said. What are you going to do? Wait, I said, and document. She did not look reassured, but she did not argue. The formal complaint arrived on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks after Claudia's warning. I was called into HR at 4:30, which is a time chosen specifically because most people's defences are low and the office is emptying out and there are fewer witnesses. The HR business partner, a man named Felix Hartmann, who always wore the same expression of careful neutrality, handed me a printed summary of an internal complaint that had been filed against me. The complaint alleged that I had created a hostile working environment for members of my team. It alleged that I had made dismissive comments about a team member's performance in front of others. It alleged that I had discouraged team members from raising concerns with management above me. It alleged, most seriously, that I had made a comment to a female team member that could be interpreted as a threat to her continued employment. I read the document twice, then I set it down on the table. Who filed this? I asked. The complaint was filed anonymously through the internal ethics channel, Felix said. And what happens now? We begin an initial review. You'll have the opportunity to respond in writing within 5 working days. In the meantime, we're asking you to have no direct contact with your team members outside of normal work tasks, and to copy your manager on all team communications. I looked at him. My manager, I said. Sandra Moll, yes. So the person I'm being asked to copy on all my communications is also the person who would benefit most from my removal before the restructuring decision is finalised. Felix's expression did not change. The complaint was filed through the anonymous channel. We have no information about who filed it. Of course, I said. I picked up my copy of the complaint, folded it, and put it in my bag. I thanked Felix for his time. I walked out of the HR office, took the stairs instead of the lift, and went to the kitchen, where I stood alone for a moment and drank the last cold inch of coffee from my blue ceramic mug. Then I went home and opened my laptop and started preparing my response. Over the next 10 days, I did something that I think surprised Sandra, though she did not show it immediately. I did not fight the complaint loudly. I did not send defensive emails. I did not lobby colleagues or try to build a coalition of supporters. I simply went to work, behaved exactly as I always had, and continued documenting everything. But I also did 2 other things. The first was that I reached out, privately and carefully, to 2 members of my team. Not to ask them to defend me. Not to tell them what was happening. Just to have honest conversations about how they were doing, what they thought of the team environment, whether they had ever felt uncomfortable coming to me with problems. These were conversations I would have had anyway, in any other month. But I also asked, at the end of each one, whether they would be willing to put their observations in writing if it ever became relevant. Both of them said yes without hesitation. One of them was Priya, the other was Leonie. The second thing I did was go back through the meeting recordings with a very specific focus. I was looking for any meeting in which Sandra had been present and in which the topics mentioned in the complaint had come up. I found 3. In the first, from a team planning session in August, Sandra had herself made the comment about a team member's performance that the complaint attributed to me. The recording was clear. Her voice was unmistakable. In the second, from a department check-in in September, I had explicitly encouraged my team to raise concerns directly with senior management if they ever felt I was not the right person to address them. This was the opposite of what the complaint alleged. In the third, from a one-on-one call with Leonie in October, the alleged threatening comment simply did not exist. The call had been recorded. The transcript showed a routine conversation about project deadlines and a discussion of Leonie's development goals. Nothing else. I saved all 3 recordings with their original timestamps, exported the relevant segments, and added them to the encrypted folder on my laptop. I did not tell HR about any of this yet. I waited. The arrogance moment came on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after the complaint was filed. Sandra called me into her office. Not a meeting room. Her office, with the glass wall and the vertical blinds she kept half closed so people in the open plan area could not quite see in. She had a document on the desk in front of her and a pen placed beside it, with the kind of deliberate positioning that means the pen is the point of the meeting. She offered me coffee. I said no. She sat her down. She folded her hands. She looked at me with an expression that I can only describe as rehearsed sympathy, the kind of look that has been practiced in a mirror until it looks almost real. I want to be honest with you, she said, because I respect you, and I think you deserve honesty. The thing about people who begin sentences with, I want to be honest with you, is that they are almost always about to lie. The review process has been difficult, she continued. There are multiple concerns. HR is going to take time to work through them, and in the meantime, the restructuring timeline is moving forward. The senior director appointment is going to be announced within the next 2 weeks. She paused. I've been asked to explore whether there's a way to resolve your situation more efficiently. She slid the document across the desk. It was a termination agreement, a settlement offer, a lump sum payment, a standard reference letter, a mutual non-disclosure clause covering the circumstances of my departure. This is a fair package, she said. It protects you. It means you leave cleanly, without a formal finding on your record. I looked at the document. I did not pick it up. And if I don't sign... She tilted her head slightly. The review continues. These things take time. They're stressful, and the outcome is uncertain. She let that sit for a moment. Then she said, very calmly, very deliberately, honestly, your name is already burned here. Even if the review clears you, people have heard things. It's hard to come back from that. This is the cleaner path. Your name is already burned here. She said it the way you say something you believe completely. Not cruel. Just certain. The certainty of someone who has already decided how the story ends and is simply waiting for the other person to accept their role in it. I looked at her for a moment, then I picked up the document, folded it, and put it in my bag. I'll think about it, I said. I need an answer by end of next week, she said. Understood, I said. I stood up. I walked out. I did not look back through the glass wall. In the kitchen, I poured myself a coffee. I held the blue ceramic mug with both hands and stood at the window and watched the grey November sky for about 2 minutes. Then I went back to my desk and sent an email to Felix Hartmann in HR, requesting a formal compliance hearing. I should explain what a compliance hearing is in our company, because it matters. Vantage Solutions had introduced a formal internal compliance process 2 years earlier, after a mid-level manager in the sales division had been found to have falsified client reports. The process was designed to handle situations where there was a genuine dispute about facts, conduct, or process integrity. It involved a 3-person panel: 1 HR representative, 1 member of senior leadership who was not connected to the case, and 1 external compliance officer contracted by the company. All parties could present evidence. Witnesses could be called. The proceedings were formally minuted. Crucially, the process was triggered not just by misconduct allegations, but also by complaints about the complaint process itself, specifically by allegations that an internal complaint had been filed in bad faith or as a means of professional interference. That was the ground on which I requested the hearing. I filed a counter-complaint alleging that the anonymous ethics complaint against me had been filed in bad faith, that it had been timed to coincide with the restructuring to remove a competing candidate, and that the complaint contained specific false allegations that were directly contradicted by recorded evidence. I attached 3 meeting recordings with timestamps. I attached Priya's written statement and Leonie's written statement. I attached my own timestamped log of interactions with Sandra. I attached the termination agreement she had handed me, with the date and the context noted. I sent the package to Felix Hartmann, to the company's general counsel, and to the external compliance officer, whose contact details were listed in the internal policy document. Then I went home and had dinner with my wife and my daughter, who was now 10 years old and had strong opinions about whether pasta or rice was the superior carbohydrate, and I did not think about any of it for the rest of the evening. The compliance hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning, 5 days after I filed my counter-complaint. I know that seems fast. It was fast. I think the speed was a sign that whoever had reviewed my submission had immediately understood what they were looking at. The hearing was held in a conference room on the 4th floor that I had never been in before. It was a room used for external client meetings, more formal than the usual internal spaces, with a long table and chairs with actual cushions, and a water jug that someone had placed in the centre with the deliberate care of a person who wanted the room to feel serious. The panel was Felix Hartmann from HR, a senior director from the finance division named Renate Vogel, who I had spoken to maybe 3 times in 4 years, and the external compliance officer, a woman named Dr. Ingrid Schreiber, who had the calm, unhurried manner of someone who has seen every version of this story before. Sandra was already in the room when I arrived. She was sitting on the opposite side of the table. She was wearing the charcoal blazer again. She looked at me when I came in. I could see her recalibrating, the way you recalibrate when you expected someone to be smaller, and they are not. She had expected, I think, that the hearing would be about defending the complaint she had filed against me. She had not expected that the hearing would be primarily about her. Dr. Schreiber opened the proceedings and explained the format. Each party would present their account. Evidence would be reviewed. Witnesses could be called. The panel would ask questions. Sandra went first. She presented the complaints she had filed, or rather, she presented a version of events in which she had simply been made aware of concerns within my team and had followed proper process by escalating them through the ethics channel. She was calm, she was articulate, she had clearly prepared. She used phrases like my duty of care and protecting team members and acting in good faith. When she finished, Dr. Schreiber asked her a simple question. Can you describe the specific incident in which the team lead made a dismissive comment about a team member's performance in front of others? Sandra described an incident from a team meeting in August. She gave a date. She gave a rough summary of what she claimed I had said. Dr. Schreiber made a note. Then she looked at me. I opened my laptop. I had the audio file queued to the relevant timestamp. I played 40 seconds of the August team meeting recording. The voice in the recording was not mine. It was Sandra's voice, making almost exactly the comment she had just attributed to me, about a team member's output being below what we'd expect at this level. Clear, unmistakable, time-stamped. The room was very quiet for a moment. Sandra said, "That's been taken out of context." Dr. Schreiber said, "We'll review the full recording. Please continue." I presented the second recording from the September department check-in, in which I had explicitly encouraged team members to escalate concerns above me if needed. This directly contradicted the complaint's allegation that I discouraged upward communication. Sandra said, "That doesn't address the specific concerns." Dr. Schreiber said, "We'll note that." I presented the third recording, the one-on-one call with Leonie, in which the alleged threatening comment simply did not occur. I presented the full transcript. I pointed to the timestamp. I noted the duration of the call and the topics covered. Sandra was quiet. Then I presented Priya's written statement. Priya had written, in clear and careful language, that she had never felt unsafe or dismissed in our team, that she had always felt able to raise concerns with me directly, and that she had in fact done so on 2 occasions, and both times I had acted on her feedback. She also noted that she had been asked, in a conversation with Sandra in early October, whether she had ever had any concerns about my management style, and that she had said no, and that Sandra had responded by asking whether she was sure and whether she had thought carefully about it. That last detail landed in the room the way a stone lands in still water. You could see the ripples. Leonie's statement was similar. She confirmed the content of our October call. She confirmed that there had been no threatening comment. She also noted that she had been approached by Sandra before the complaint was filed and had been asked leading questions about my conduct, questions that seemed designed to elicit a negative response. Dr. Schreiber set down her pen. She looked at Sandra. "Ms. Moll, the evidence presented suggests that the complaint filed through the ethics channel contained specific allegations that are contradicted by contemporaneous recordings and by written statements from the team members you cited as sources of concern. Can you help us understand the discrepancy?" Sandra said, "Recordings can be selective. Statements can be influenced." "Are you suggesting the recordings were edited?" Dr. Schreiber asked. "I'm saying context matters. The recordings carry original metadata and timestamps from the company's own meeting platform," I said. "They haven't been edited. The platform logs would confirm that." Dr. Schreiber nodded. She made another note. Then Renata Vogel, the finance director who had been mostly silent until this point, asked the question that I think everyone in the room had been waiting for. "Ms. Moll, the counter-complaint also includes a copy of a termination agreement that you presented to the team lead. In that conversation, you stated that his name was, and I'm quoting here, already burned. Can you describe what you meant by that, and whether you believe that statement was consistent with a fair and impartial review process?" Sandra opened her mouth. She closed it. She looked at the document. She looked at me. She looked at Renata Vogel. "I was trying to help him," she said. "I was trying to give him a way out that protected him." "By telling him his name was already burned," Renata said without inflection. "It was a figure of speech. It's in his contemporaneous notes, which were logged the same day," I said, timestamped at 4:47 p.m. Sandra looked at me then with an expression I had not seen from her before. Not the rehearsed sympathy, not the confident certainty, something raw, something that looked almost like she was trying to remember when she had stopped being careful. The hearing continued for another 90 minutes. The panel asked questions. Sandra answered some of them and deflected others, and twice said she needed to consult with her own HR representative before responding. Dr. Schreiber noted each deflection without comment. At the end, Dr. Schreiber thanked both parties and said the panel would deliver its findings within 10 working days. Sandra and I left the room at the same time. She walked toward the lifts. I walked toward the stairs. Neither of us said anything. The findings came in 8 days, not 10. I was called into Felix Hartmann's office on a Wednesday afternoon. He had the report in front of him, printed and bound, which felt like a formality since he was clearly going to summarize it rather than hand it to me. The panel had found that the complaint filed against me through the ethics channel contained specific false or unsupported allegations. The panel had found that the complaint appeared to have been filed in connection with the restructuring process in a manner that constituted a conflict of interest. The panel had found that the termination agreement I had been presented with, combined with the statement that my name was already burned, represented conduct that was inconsistent with the company's fair process obligations. The original complaint against me was dismissed in full. Sandra Moll had been placed on administrative leave pending further review. The senior director appointment process had been paused. The company's general counsel was reviewing whether the matter had any additional legal dimensions. Felix Hartmann read all of this in a careful, measured voice, and then he looked up and said, "I want to say on behalf of HR that the process did not serve you well in this case. I'm sorry for that." I appreciated him saying it. I did not tell him that his apology landed about 6 weeks too late to matter very much. "What happens to my team?" I asked. He looked slightly surprised by the question. "The restructuring review continues. Your team's status is unchanged." "And Tobias? His certification process?" "That's unaffected." "And Priya's role?" "Also unaffected." I nodded. I picked up my bag. I stood up. "One more thing," Felix said. "The company would like to offer you a formal apology in writing and discuss whether there are steps we can take to address the impact this process has had on you professionally." "I'll think about it," I said. I walked out of his office. I went to the kitchen. I filled my blue ceramic mug with coffee. I stood at the window and looked out at the street below, where people were walking in the grey December cold with their coats pulled tight, and I thought about my daughter painting that mug when she was 7, the uneven red letters, the way she had looked at me when she handed it to me and said, "So you always know I'm thinking about you at work, Dad." I thought about Sandra's smile when she slid the termination agreement across the desk, the certainty in her voice. "Your name is already burned here." I thought about Priya and Leonie, who had put their names to written statements knowing it might make their own positions complicated because they believed it was the right thing to do. I finished my coffee. The full consequences took shape over the following weeks. Sandra Moll was formally removed from her management position at the end of the review process. The senior director appointment, which she had manoeuvred the entire situation to secure, was awarded to an external candidate. She was offered a lateral move to a non-management role in a different division, which she declined. She left the company in January. I heard later, through the kind of corridor information that travels in every office, that the general counsel had determined there were no grounds for a formal legal proceeding, but that the findings of the compliance panel had been shared with the board as part of a broader review of internal process integrity. Sandra's professional reputation within the company was not burned. It was simply gone. She had spent years building it, carefully, strategically, and it dissolved in 8 days of panel findings. The restructuring went ahead. My team was kept intact. Tobias finished his certification and was promoted to senior analyst. Priya took on a project lead role that had not existed before. Leonie, who had turned down that competitor offer 6 months earlier, was offered a new contract with a salary adjustment that reflected what she was actually worth. I was offered a formal role upgrade and an expanded team. I turned it down, not because I was bitter, not because I wanted to punish the company for what had happened, but because I had spent the previous 2 months sitting with my laptop at my kitchen table at 11 p.m. building an evidence file. And in that process, I had learned something about myself that I could not unlearn. I had learned that I was very good at protecting people in environments that did not deserve the effort. And I had started wondering what it would feel like to work somewhere that made that effort unnecessary. I found the new company through a contact I had worked with on a cross-industry project 2 years earlier. She had moved to a mid-sized firm that was doing genuinely interesting work in operational analytics, and she had mentioned in passing that they were looking for someone to build out their team lead structure. I had a first conversation in November while the compliance process was still ongoing. I had a second conversation in December. In January, I accepted an offer. The difference was visible from the first week, not in the perks or the salary, though both were better. In the smaller things, the way the leadership team talked about their people in meetings, the way disagreements were handled directly rather than through anonymous channels and strategic complaints. The way my new manager, a man named Daniel, who had the slightly rumpled energy of someone who had been in enough bad organizations to know exactly what he did not want to replicate, said to me in our first one-on-one, "I hired you because people who worked with you said you were the kind of person who makes the people around him better. That's what I need. So tell me what you need to do that well." I told him. He listened. He wrote some of it down. That was the entire conversation. I brought the blue ceramic mug with me to the new office. It sits on my desk now, next to my laptop, with the uneven red letters facing outward. My daughter is 12 now and has strong opinions about whether the mug is embarrassing, but she also told me last month that she was glad I kept it. I think about Sandra occasionally, not with anger, more with the particular kind of clarity that comes when you have seen something through to its end and understand all of it. She was not a monster. She was a person who had decided that winning was more important than being honest, and who had been good enough at that calculation for long enough that she had stopped being able to imagine it failing. The compliance panel did not destroy her. She had already built the thing that destroyed her, carefully, over time, and I had simply documented it. That is the part I want people to understand. I did not win because I was clever, or because I had a dramatic confrontation, or because I delivered a perfect speech. I won because I stayed calm when she expected me to panic. I won because I kept records when she expected me to be defenseless. I won because Priya and Leonie were willing to tell the truth. And the truth was that I had been the kind of manager who made that feel safe. Your name is already burned here. I think about that sentence sometimes when I am sitting in a meeting at the new company, watching a team of people solve a problem together without anyone maneuvering for position, and I feel something that is not quite pride and not quite relief, but is somewhere between the two. A kind of settled clarity. My name is not burned. It is written in uneven red letters on a blue ceramic mug that my daughter made when she was 7, and I drink my coffee from it every morning. That is enough.